Mr. Chair and the honorable members of the Blue Ribbon Committee. Mr. Chair, may I be allowed to read an opening statement?
Go ahead. How many minutes?
3 minutes lang po.
Go ahead.
Okay. Salamat po. Dear Senator Lacson and honorable members of the Blue Ribbon Committee, again, I am Roberto Bernardo, formerly an Undersecretary for Operations of the Department of Public Works and Highways. Today, I am once more before the Honorable Blue Ribbon Committee upon its invitation and consistent with my assurance during my first appearance last September 25, 2025 to fully cooperate in its ongoing investigation. I am here not only out of respect for the invitation of the Honorable Committee, more importantly, I am compelled to come clean because of my fear of God Almighty and my ardent desire for my countrymen to give me a chance to atone for what I have done and failed to do, for which I offer no excuse or justification. Nung ako'y nabanggit sa mga irregularidad na ito, ang una kong naisip ay manahimik tungkol sa nalalaman ko. Haharapin ko na lang ang mga asunto na isasampa sa akin. Ako ay aasa na lamang sa pamamagitan ng aking pananahimik ay makakakuha ako ng proteksyon mula sa makapangyarihan sa politika at maimpluwensyang mga personalidad na silang may pakana o kaya nagbigay daan sa mga irregularidad na ito. Gayunpaman, napagtanto ko na ang isang pagkakamali ay hindi maaaring iwasto ng isa pang pagkakamali. At kung may maisang pamangkaso ay maaaring magtagal ito bago matapos. Sa aking pagkakaalam sa mga nakarang scam, tulad ng ilang kaso ng PDAF, mahigit isang dekada na ang nakalipas, hanggang ngayon ay dinidinig pa. Kawawa ang bayan. Hindi ko matiyak kung ang mga pangunahing may sala sa mga irregularidad na ito ay mapapatawan ng kaukulang parusa sa lalong madaling panahon. Gayunpaman, umaasa ako na sa pamamagitan ng kasulukuyang mga pagdinig ay makakabuo ang ating mga mambabatas ng kaukulang batas na hindi lamang tutugon sa epekto ng mga maanumalyang gawain ito, kundi na rin makakapigil sa pag-ulit nito. The magnitude of the irregularities and how this have gravely affected and will affect our nation and its citizens cannot be overemphasized. I am committed to disclose everything that I know regarding these anomalies, particularly the complicated and ingenious ways by which these were carried out and perpetrated all these years. This, despite the serious threats to my personal safety and that of my family and loved ones. Mula sa aking paninilbihan bilang isang mababang laborer hanggang ako'y naging isang undersecretary, napag-alaman ko na ang profesional na kakayahan at integridad ay maaaring hindi sapat upang matiyak ang tagumpay sa profesional na karera ng isang tao. Nakapaloob sa isang tiwaling sistema kung saan ang isang tao ay pinangakuan ng biyaya o kaya'y pinipilit na lumahok sa mga irregularidad. Ang takot sa maaaring masamang mangyari bunga ng hindi pagsunod o pagnanais na rin sa personal na pakinabang o kaya'y kombinasyon ng dalawang ito ay sumisira sa moral na direksyon ng isang tao. Lalo na kung ang mga dapat na may pangunahing kakayanan na humadlang sa masamang gawain ay siya ring may pakana nito at nagbibigay daan dito. Naniniwala ako na hindi lamang ako ang nakaranas sa sitwasyong ito. Nakikiusap ako sa mga nasa ganitong kalalagayan na magtiwala sa kinauukulan at lumantad na at makipagtulungan sa kasulukuyang investigasyon. In connection with my application for coverage as a state witness under Republic Act No. 6981, I have earlier submitted to the Department of Justice a second supplemental affidavit, further clarifying my previous disclosures on the government flood control and other infrastructure projects subject of the present proceedings. Once again, with the assurance of the Honorable Committee that my rights and benefits under RA 6981 shall be respected, I will be submitting the second supplemental affidavit to the Honorable Committee with the prior authority of the Department of Justice through the Honorable Frederick A. Vida, Acting DOJ Secretary, as set out in an authority to disclose, which I am likewise submitting to the Honorable Committee. Thank you po.
Proceed with your statement.
Second supplemental affidavit. I, Roberto Bernardo, Filipino, of legal age and a resident of Malolos City, Bulacan, under oath, hereby depose and state. I am submitting this second supplemental affidavit consisted with my desire to set forth my knowledge about the irregularities in government flood control and other infrastructure projects, as well as to obtain peace of mind and preserve the truth. Among other factors the contents of this second supplemental affidavit had to be violated by me by making reference to an assortment of personal notes and records, deep thinking, as well as confirming with persons certain details regarding the time, place, manner, and circumstances under which the events narrated hereunder occurred. Moreover, owing to the passage of time and the fact that I am no longer part of the DPWH following my retirement in August 2025, the process of collecting facts and details had progressed slower than expected, contributing to the delay in the submission of this second supplemental affidavit. Also, I would like to make clear that while the facts narrated below are based on my direct personal knowledge and fortified by official DPWH records, the kickback scheme pertaining to the collection and handoff of the commitments to the relevant public officers occur practically without any paper trail. A statement of facts applicable to all. Over the decades that I worked for the DPWH, it has always been my philosophy to form good working relationships between and among my bosses and or superiors, inferiors and or subordinates, and other colleagues, even without the promise or expectation of a reward or personal advantage. I would rather troubleshoot problems than develop enemies and immediately address all concerns. I would do this so that I can effectively perform my duties and responsibilities under the DPWH. Unfortunately, this professional orientation of mine has forced me to compromising situations that include the matters narrated hereunder. I reiterate my deep remorse and guilt for what I have done, and I am now animated by an honest desire to help rectify the institutional defects in the systems and operations, not only of DPWH, but also other government agencies, and help in developing lasting and meaningful reforms. I can confirm, based on my personal knowledge, that in some form or another, and on various extents, based on current setup, each and every DPWH official, employee from top and down the line is buffeted with various avenues of corrupt acts and practices. This would include high-ranking members of the department, such as secretary, undersecretaries, assistant secretaries, regional directors, district engineers, bids and awards committee members, engineers, inspectors, and all the way down to laborers. This is also true for several top officials of other departments and or agencies, such as but not limited to the Department of Finance, Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Department of Health, Department of Education, Department of Agriculture, Department of Agrarian Reform, Department of Transportation, Philippine Charity Sweepstakes, Philippine Coconut Authority, etc. Moreover, I can confirm, based on my personal knowledge, that in some form or another, and on various extents, most proponents have their own designated contractors who will take on the projects for the former's benefit and advantage. Sometimes, other proponents would request me to suggest contractors for them who are known to me or referred to me by friends and other personalities. There are situations that national and local elected politicians would request me to source projects for them. If given more time and opportunity to review the records and confirm supporting facts, I may be able to particularize the details of these transactions and dealings. Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr. I have a close and friendly relationship with Senator Ramon Bong Revilla, and we go all the way back since the time of Amay Bisaya and Mayor Viseo, who first introduced me to the former legislator while I was still a district engineer in Laguna sometime in 2005 or 2006. We frequently meet in important social gatherings. Senator Revilla later on became a godparent of two of my daughters, while I became a godparent to one of his children. When Senator Revilla was incarcerated, I visited him several times at the PNP Custodial Center at Camp Crame. Because of our close relationship, Senator Revilla had asked me for assistance on several matters, which I can no longer exactly recall at the moment because this happened a long time ago, and I presently don't have records to help me reconstruct the events. Sometime in the third quarter of 2024, Senator Revilla and I met, where he asked me for a list of projects for funding, ostensibly to help him in his national campaign. When Senator Revilla asked me about the percentage of the commitment, I suggested either 20 or 25, to which Senator Revilla said 25%. Soon thereafter, also in the third quarter of 2024, I asked then District Engineer Henry Alcantara to prepare a list of projects, which he subsequently gave to me. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex A. Moreover, still in the third quarter of 2024, I also asked then District Engineer, but later Regional Director for NCR, Engineer Gerard Opalencia, to prepare a list of projects which he subsequently gave to me. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex B. I had the list of projects totaling 1.5 billion submitted by Engineer Henry and Engineer Gerard, consolidated in one sheet of paper, and gave the same to Senator Revilla in the third quarter of 2024. With respect to the projects under the NEP and HGAB, I followed this up with Secretary Manny Bonoan upon request of Senator Revilla, who would also follow this up with Usec Cathy Cabral. The White House compound is the ancestral home of the Revillas with the large Blue Gate entrance at the time. Sometime in the last quarter of 2024, Engineer Alcantara collected the 25% commitment of about 125 million and informed me that the same was ready for turnover through Engineer Gerard Opalencia. Engineer Gerard Opalencia told me that the 25% commitment was already loaded in my vehicle. After receipt of the 25% commitment, which were packed in 6 cardboard boxes, each containing at least 20 million, and 1 paper bag containing 5 million, I called up Senator Revilla to inform him the same is ready to be turned over to him. Sometime December 2024, probably the Monday after my receipt of the commitment, my driver and I went to the residence of Senator Revilla. Upon reaching the area, I tried calling Senator Revilla, but he was not answering my call, so I waited. After waiting for approximately 1 hour at a nearby gasoline station, we were finally allowed inside the compound by the guard. Once inside, we parked the vehicle, and shortly upon alighting, I saw Senator Revilla at the terrace. I walked over to Senator Revilla for a casual talk. While the boxes were being unloaded, Senator Revilla and I talked for about 20 to 25 minutes. I asked him, "Sen, bakit hindi ka nangangampanya?" Senator Bong replied, "Okay naman pare, maganda results ng survey. Relax muna." The personnel of Senator Revilla helped in unloading the boxes. After the delivery of the commitment, I headed back to Manila. Sometime late January or February 2025, in relation to a list of projects submitted by Engineer Gerard Opalencia, Senator Revilla called me to follow up on the status of the commitment. About a week later, sometime February 2025, I informed Senator Revilla that the same was ready for turnover. Before the start of the campaign period for national elective positions, I directed one of my aides to deliver commitment amounting to 250 million to the residence of Senator Revilla at the White House compound, Aguinaldo Highway, Bacoor, Cavite. Senator Nancy Binay. Carlin Yap Villa is the aide of Senator Nancy Binay, who transacted with me regarding the latter's projects and commitment. If I recall correctly, I first met Carlin in the year 2018 during the budget season at the Senate. Eventually, sometime 2019, Usec Trigib Olivar, whom I knew very well, endorsed Carlin to me. From then on, Carlin would contact me directly to follow up the status of different matters. Sometime fourth quarter in 2022, Carlin, claiming to act on behalf of Senator Binay, asked my help for the transfer of an assistant district engineer in Mindanao to another district, a request which I endorsed to Sec Bonoan. Sometime during the third to fourth quarter of 2022, Carlin requested on behalf of Senator Binay for a list of projects worth around 1.882 billion with 12% commitment. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex C. I got 3% of 1.882 billion. I prepared a list of projects within my area of jurisdiction with the help of DPWH officials, but could not recall at this time exactly who among them gave me the list. But I can recall that it was Engineer Manny Bulusan who coordinated the collection of the commitment. Eventually, during the first quarter of 2023, the commitment was delivered to Carlin for Senator Binay in several tranches in Makati and Quezon City. But I could not recall at this time the details of the deliveries, but I undertake to submit additional information thereon. Sometime last quarter of 2023, Carlin again asked for Senator Binay a list of projects for inclusion and funding under the 2024 GAA, which I provided with the help of Engineer Gerard Opalencia and Engineer Henry Alcantara. The total list of projects initially amounted to 2.5 billion, but which was reduced to 1.672 billion. The said projects are enumerated in the list here to attach as Annex D. Apparently, some individual or group offered Senator Binay a higher amount of commitment of 15% instead of the previous 12%, with the promise that the commitment would be released much earlier. Usec Trigive learned about the plan to transact with this individual or group, and I was informed by Usec Trigive that he confronted Carlene and said to her, "Bakit nyo binabawasan ng kay Robert? Siya din naman ang nilalapitan ng mga yan pagka nagkakaproblema." However, sometime later part of December 2023, Carlene called me and requested for a 50 million advance for Senator Binay's shoes for the holiday season because the individual or group was unable to deliver on their promise, and which I then helped to fix. Thereafter, Carlene told me that Senator Binay was expecting an increase in the commitment from 12 to 15%, which I agreed to fulfill. I did not get any percentages from the aforementioned projects worth 1.672 billion, but I was reimbursed the 50 million which I earlier advanced. I was nurturing goodwill with Senator Binay by fulfilling the commitment. Sometime 2024, Carlene requested me to relay to Sec Bonoan Senator Binay's request for some allocation under the NEP, which I did. Sec Bonoan allocated 500 million for Senator Binay under the NEP for 2025, which I relayed to Carlene. Carlene told me to prepare a list of projects for the 500 million allocation. I then asked a list of projects from Engineer Henry and Engineer Gerard worth 500 million, which I then submitted in person with Sec Bonoan, who then told me he will instruct Usec Cabral to include the same in the NEP. The list of projects was included in the NEP for 2025. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex E. Likewise, sometime in the last quarter of 2024, Carlene for Senator Binay asked for a list of projects to be included in the 2025 GAA. I then directed Engineer Henry and Engineer Gerard of Polencia to prepare a consolidated list of projects. I submitted a list of projects totaling 3 billion to Carlene, but only approximately 2.6 billion was included. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex F. After these projects appeared in the GAA, Engineer Bulusan, Engineer Opolencia, and myself collected, raised, and prepared the 15% commitment, which was all turned over to me. There were difficulties in collecting the commitment, as there were contractors, congressmen who did not give amount considering the issue of for later release projects totaling approximately 80 million more or less, which I had to advance. Despite this total commitment collected and raised for Senator Binay was 15% of 1.2 billion or around 468 million more or less. I earlier mentioned that the 37 million more or less was delivered at Horseshoe Village, Quezon City, which refers to the amount collected by Engineer Henry Alcantara. But upon full recollection, there were two deliveries. The first delivery amounted to 340 million at a house in Horseshoe Village, Quezon City, and the second delivery amounted to at least 200 million at another house, but also in Horseshoe Village, Quezon City. After the second delivery, Carlene told me, "Kinuha na ni Sir, salamat raw. Hindi ka raw kakalimutan sa Makati." The Sir refers to the husband of Senator Binay. I did not get any percentage from the projects worth 3,120 million for NEP and GAA for Senator Binay. Senator Chiz Escudero and Maynard Ngu. I met Maynard Ngu at the Manila City Hall during the term of Mayor Erap, and while I was the city engineer of Manila sometime in 2013. Maynard Ngu is a familiar figure in the social political circles, as he would be handling substantial donations to politicians during election season, including the distribution of mobile phones. During the 2022 national elections, Maynard Ngu approached me and asked for help in raising campaign funds. I and other DPWH officials assisted Maynard Ngu in raising campaign funds. These frequent interactions with Maynard Ngu at the court helped me in building our mutual trust with each other, especially in favor of Senator Escudero, whose interest Maynard Ngu was actively promoting. Maynard Ngu was appointed Special Envoy to China for Trade, Investments, and Tourism in 2023. When Senator Chiz Escudero became Senate President in 2024, Maynard Ngu approached me and asked for a list of projects for Senator Chiz Escudero. Thereafter, sometime in November 2024, I asked Engineer Opolencia to prepare a list of projects for Senator Chiz Escudero following my conversation with Maynard Ngu. Thereafter, Engineer Opolencia submitted to me a list of projects for funding. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex G. For the projects located in Valenzuela, Engineer Opolencia, through District Engineer Ruel Umali, collected the money for the commitment for Senator Chiz Escudero. He delivered the commitment at Diamond Hotel. We saw each other at the Diamond Hotel, and Engineer Opolencia told me, nasa inyo na po, boss. When I asked my driver to confirm, the driver told me, nasa akin na po, okay na po. For the projects located in Marinduque, Engineer Opolencia, through Regional Director Ryan Altea collected the commitment for Senator Chiz Escudero. He delivered to me the commitment at Diamond Hotel. Engineer Opalencia called me and said, may papadala ako sa inyo ngayon. Sa iyo ngayon, dadalhin na lang po sa Diamond. Later, the driver told me, nasa akin na po, okay na po. Following a deeper recollection of the facts and checking with public records, I can now confirm that in addition to the Valenzuela and Marinduque projects, Engineer Opalencia also provided the list of projects for Oriental Mindoro and Quezon City. The complete list of projects for Senator Chiz Escudero is worth 1.4 billion with 20% commitment. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex H. Sometime early 2025, I made the first delivery of 160 million for Senator Chiz Escudero at the Cherry Mobile Building at Maynard Ngu in Apacible Street, Manila. Thereafter, early 2025, I made the second delivery of 120 million for Senator Chiz Escudero, also at the Cherry Mobile Building of Maynard Ngu. Senator Jinggoy Estrada. I have known Senator Jinggoy Ejercito Estrada since I met Senator Jinggoy Estrada through the social circles of Senator Bong Revilla. We usually had encounters during social gatherings of people in the movie industry. We developed a close relationship. Sometime in 2010, when I was Assistant Regional Director of DPWH Region 4A, Senator Jinggoy was backing me to become a Regional Director. When I failed to become a Regional Director, I applied for the position of City Engineer, and Senator Jinggoy was one of those who recommended me. When he was incarcerated, I would visit him, but sometimes together with then City Mayor Joseph Erap Estrada. Sometime in 2023, Senator Jinggoy requested Secretary Bonoan through me for projects worth 500 million. Secretary Bonoan agreed to give 450 million for the DPWH NCR building, which Usec Cabral included in the NEP for 2024, with an 18% commitment for Senator Jinggoy. Senator Jinggoy called me sometime in the third quarter of 2024 and asked me to request the amount of 1 billion from Sec Bonoan. Senator Jinggoy said, tulungan mo na lang ako dyan kasi marami pa akong tutulungan sa eleksyon. I replied, okay na ba ang 25% Sen? Sen Jinggoy responded, okay na ang 25%. I relayed to Sec Bonoan the request of Sen Jinggoy. The former then asked me to prepare a list of projects for the latter. In turn, I asked Engineer Gerard Opalencia for a list of projects. When Engineer Opalencia gave me the list, I gave it to Secretary Bonoan, who told me that he will give the same to Usec Cabral and that the latter will take care of it. At the moment, I cannot locate the list or a copy thereof. Later on, I saw that some of these projects totaling 500 million and included in the list I gave to Sec Bonoan were listed in the NEP for that year. These projects, as appearing in the NEP, are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex I hereof. Thereafter, Senator Jinggoy called me and asked me what happened to the difference of 500 million. I relayed this to Sec Bonoan. The latter replied that he will prioritize the matter as soon as there is available funding. Subsequently, I found out that the projects totaling 200 million were included in the SGAB for 2025. These projects, as appearing in the SGAB, are listed Annex J hereof. However, Senator Jinggoy called me again for the difference of 300 million to complete the 1 billion project value that was requested. During the BICAM, projects worth 750 million were again included in the projects to eventually form part of the 2025 GAA. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as Annex K. The total budget for the projects which appeared in the 2025 GAA is approximately 1.45 billion, more or less. After Engineer Opalencia collected the 25% commitment, approximately 360 million, and delivered the same to Diamond Hotel in Manila. Thereafter, I tasked my driver to deliver the boxes to Sen Jinggoy at the Archaga building in San Juan City. Senator Jinggoy personally confirmed to me his receipt of the commitment and thanked me for the same. During the 2024 budget hearing for 2025 GAA, Engineer Alcantara informed me that Senator Jinggoy gave him funding amounting to 355 million for Bulacan First DEO and 500 million from other districts in Bulacan and requested that he, Engineer Alcantara, prepare lists of projects. The said projects are enumerated in a list here to attach as annexes L and L-1 respectively. Later on, sometime in the first quarter of 2025, Senator Jinggoy asked me to get the 285% commitment for the aforesaid list of projects from Engineer Alcantara. Engineer Alcantara then delivered to me the 25% commitment, approximately 213 million, which I delivered to Senator Jinggoy at the Archaga building in San Juan City. Senator Grace Poe. Sometime third quarter of 2024, J.Y. De La Rosa, a staff of Senator Grace Poe, requested Sec Bonoan through me if Senator Grace Poe can be accommodated in the DPWH NEP. Sec Bonoan told me there is a 500 million for Senator Grace Poe and instructed me to ask the Senator for a list of projects. J.Y. De La Rosa told me to coordinate the matter with Mrs. Patron, a contractor. Mrs. Patron told me to prepare the list. Upon my instructions, Engineer Gerard Apollesia submitted a consolidated list of the following projects, 1 in Laguna and 3 in NCR. These projects are indicated in the list here to attach as Annex M. Thereafter, the list of projects was included in the NEP by Sec Bonoan through Usec Cati Cabral. Later on, the said projects appeared in the GAA for 2025. There was a 20% commitment collected for Senator Grace Poe. Mrs. Patron, a contractor, collected the commitment for Sen. Grace Poe at Diamond Hotel from one of my aides. Congresswoman Mary Mitzi Mitz Kahayon Uy. There were projects released in Congresswoman Kahayon Uy's congressional district, which I facilitated. I submitted projects being proposed by her to proponents for funding, the details of which I am still verifying and confirming at the moment. Congressman Plerida Robes. There were also projects released in Congresswoman Plerida Robes' congressional district, which I facilitated. I submitted projects being proposed by her to proponents for funding, the details of which I'm still verifying and confirming at the moment. Congressman Zaldico. In addition to my statements in my affidavit dated 25 of September 2025, I was told by Engineer Alcantara, Congressman Zaldi would from time to time deal also with Engineers Gerard Pacanan, Gerard Apollesia, and Danny Villa. There were times Engineer Gerard Pacanan and Gerard Apollesia would give me certain amounts, supposedly from Congressman Zaldico. Usec Tri-Give Olivar of David. In addition to my statements in my affidavit dated 25 of September 2025, I wish to add that I have known Usec Tri-Give as early as 2010 when he was still a staff of Senator Bong Revilla. He is a common figure in budget deliberation hearings and by reason of which I had interacted with him on multiple occasions. Usec Tri-Give then worked under the office of Senator Edgardo Angara and then later worked under the office of Senator Sani Angara. When Senator Sani Angara became a chairman of finance, Usec Tri-Give and I would have several interactions as part of our work in budget preparations. When Senator Revilla was incarcerated with Senator Jinggoy Estrada, Usec Tri-Give and I would frequently call each other so we can help look after the welfare of concerns of Senator Revilla, whom I visited several times with Senator Jinggoy Estrada while they were in detention. Aside from the details I had earlier mentioned in my affidavit dated 25 of September 2025, Usec Tri-Give and I also had transactions concerning Senator Angara between 2019 and 2024, where Usec Tri-Give received deliveries representing 12% of the projects of Senator Sani Angara, while the latter was chairman of finance. As I previously mentioned in my affidavit dated 25 of September 2025, Usec Olivar and I discussed the unprogrammed appropriations supposedly for the Office of the Executive Secretary. Thereafter, DPWH received a special allotment release order, which included projects worth 2.85 billion. The contract IDs for the projects worth 2.85 billion covered by the said SARO can be secured from the records of DPWH Regional Office for Region 3 and the 1st District Engineering Office of Bulacan. Moreover, in the unprogrammed appropriate allocation for 2025, there could have been an additional 12 billion more or less funding, which I am verifying and confirming at the moment. DPWH Secretary Mark Villar and Usec Cabral. I was appointed Assistant Secretary of DPWH by former President Rodrigo Duterte in 2016 during the term of DPWH Secretary Mark Villar. As Assistant Secretary for Operations, I was assigned over the Visayas regions. While I was Assistant Secretary for Operations, I was introduced to Carlo Aguilar, a cousin of Sec Mark Villar. Usec Cabral was already the Undersecretary for Planning Service when I became Assistant Secretary. As Undersecretary for Planning Service, Usec Cabral was working closely with Sec Mark Villar for the allocation, listing, and budgeting of all the DPWH infrastructure projects. While I was Assistant Secretary, I was also later designated as Chairman of the Central Bids and Awards Committee, Central BAC. In the later part of 2017, I was promoted to Undersecretary of the DPWH during the incumbency of Senator Mark Villar and took my oath of office as Undersecretary before him. In the first quarter of 2018, I was designated as Undersecretary for Operations for NCR, 4B, and the 3 Visayas regions. Upon my request, I was replaced as chairman Central Bank sometime in February 2020 because of political intrigues, as I was reportedly siding with then City of Manila Mayor Isko Moreno, who was vocal against then President Rodrigo Duterte. All of this time, the funding of all projects was cleared through Usec Cabral for approval by Sec Mark Villar. From time to time, Usec Cabral would ask me to submit detailed list of projects with regards to lump sum fund allocations of DPWH, which list she sometimes would approve herself or forward to Sec Mark Villar for approval. Among others, this included EDSA and other major roads, project allocations, maintenance of creeks and waterways, etc. The commission for these approved projects was 10% and divided as follows: 50% to Carlo Aguilar, presumably for Sec Mark Villar, 25% Usec Cabral, 25% for myself. Undersecretary Maria Catalina E. Cabral. As a general rule, with very little exceptions, it is Usec Maria Catalina Cabral, with the imprimatur of Secretary Mark Villar, and later continued by Sec Manny Bonoan, who had control at the DPWH level to remove, include, add, deduct, or modify insertions of items in the NEP for infrastructure or those pertaining to DPWH. Usec Cabral would tell me that she would communicate and meet legislators to inform them of the amount of their allocations and ask them for titles of projects that they want to include in the DPWH budget. In a matrix of process flow that I have prepared, which I am attaching here to as Annex N, Usec Cabral has total influence and authority in preparing and finalizing the NEP for infrastructure. On multiple occasions, I personally delivered and also caused to be delivered cash to Usec Cabral at her house at Tatalon, Quezon City, and other places. DPWH Secretary Manuel Bonoan. DPWH Secretary Manuel Bonoan is a long-time DPWH official who has held top positions through different administrations. I look up to Sec Bonoan and consider him as a mentor. I treasure his guidance and friendship over the years. Prior to Sec Bonoan's assumption as Secretary of DPWH, I was the Undersecretary for Operations and Planning for NCR Visayas, having assumed the said position in 2018. Unlike during the time of Sec Mark Villar, when I was not given much task, even removed as back chairman, and had very limited operational functions during the COVID pandemic period, Sec Bonoan entrusted me with more operational functions and let me work more closely with Usec Cabral. Sometime in 2022, Sec Bonoan directed me to submit a list of projects for possible inclusion in the NEP for fiscal year 2023 worth around 450 million. Without question and delay, I asked Bulacan First DEO for a list of projects for funding. Thereafter, Engineer Alcantara submitted to me a list of projects for funding under the NEP. Those projects are indicated in the list here to attach as Annex O. In compliance with this order, I forwarded the list to Sec Bonoan. He told me that Undersecretary for Planning Maria Catalina Cati Cabral shall facilitate and ensure the inclusion of these projects in the NEP. Engineer Alcantara gave the 10% of the value of the projects. Similarly, in 2023, Sec Bonoan directed me to submit a list of projects for possible inclusion in the NEP for fiscal year 2024 worth around 150 million. Again, without question and delay, I asked Bulacan First DEO for a list of projects for funding. Thereafter, Engineer Alcantara submitted to me a list of projects for funding under the NEP. Those projects are indicated in the list here to attach as Annex P. In compliance with this order, I forwarded the list to Sec Bonoan. In compliance with this order, I forwarded the list to Sec Bonoan. Sec Bonoan said that Usec Cabral shall again facilitate and ensure the inclusion of these projects in the NEP. Engineer Alcantara gave 15% of the value of the projects. Also in the year 2024, Sec Bonoan also directed me to submit a list of projects for possible inclusion in the NEP for fiscal year 2025 for the amount of 900 million. I asked Bulacan First DEO for a list of projects for funding. Thereafter, Engineer Alcantara submitted to me a list of projects for funding under the NEP. Those projects are indicated in the list here to attach as Annex Q. In compliance with this order, I forwarded the list to Sec Bonoan Sec Bonoan said that Usec Cabral shall again facilitate and ensure the inclusion of these projects in the NEP. Engineer Alcantara gave 20% of the value of the projects. With respect to the commitments collected by Engineer Alcantara narrated above, Secretary Bonoan and I received a percentage. In many instances during budget deliberations, I was tasked by Sec Bonoan to talk to legislators over their funding and other concerns, and to forward these concerns to Usec Cabral for action and resolution. Sec Bonoan and Usec Cabral. Every year, including years 2023, 2024, and 2025, Usec Kati Cabral apportions the budget ceiling for the DPWH's allocable NEP among the districts according to the endorsed programs, activities, and projects, PAPs. Although she would make it appear that 100% allocable NEP had been apportioned, Usec Kati Cabral would reserve a substantial percentage of that allocable NEP for her and Sec Bonoan's preferred projects. Sec Manny Bonoan would from time to time ask me to take charge of part of his own reserve allocations. The value of the projects that I handled for Sec Bonoan was at least 5 billion per annum for the years 2023, 2024, and 2025, with an average of 15% commitment. Of this 15% average commitment, Sec Bonoan 75% usually would give. Of this 15% average commitment, Sec Bonoan 75% usually would give me 25% of the commitment, with the rest of the commitment shared between him and Usec Kati Cabral. Usec Kati Cabral herself took charge of her own reserve allocations. Once again, I humbly reserve the right to submit another supplementary affidavit if warranted in the premises. I attest to the truth of the foregoing statements based on my personal knowledge and authentic records. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you.